Sarah Martinez grips her boarding pass as lightning splits Denver's sky. Her 6-year-old daughter Emma tugs at her sleeve, but Sarah's world suddenly fractures. She sees it all. Flames consuming metal wings, screams lost in thunder, her daughter's hands slipping away in smoke. The premonition hits like electricity through her spine. "We're not flying today," she whispers, pulling Emma back from gate 14. The attendant calls their names, but Sarah's already running toward the exit, her heart pounding with terrifying certainty. The Denver International Airport buzzed with typical afternoon chaos, travelers dragging suitcases across polished floors, while overhead announcements echoed through the cavernous space. Sarah Martinez stood frozen at gate 14, her knuckles white as she clutched Emma's small hand. The boarding pass trembled between her fingers like a fragile leaf in a storm. Flight 447 to Phoenix, now boarding all passengers, the gate agent announced cheerfully, her voice cutting through Sarah's racing thoughts like a knife through silk. Emma bounced on her toes, her Disney princess backpack jostling with excitement. "Mommy, can we sit by the window? I want to see the clouds." Her innocent enthusiasm felt like daggers in Sarah's chest. Through the massive windows, storm clouds gathered with ominous intensity. Lightning forked across the darkening sky, each flash illuminating the aircraft that would supposedly carry them safely to their new life in Arizona. But Sarah knew better now. The vision had been too real, too vivid. She could still smell the acrid smoke, still hear the metal groaning as it twisted in impossible shapes. "Ma'am, you're holding up the line," the gate agent called, tapping her manicured nails against the counter. Other passengers shifted impatiently behind them, checking their phones and muttering about delays. Sarah's throat felt like sandpaper. How could she explain that she'd seen their deaths? That in her mind, she'd watched Emma's face disappear into flames? We can't board this flight." The agent's professional smile faltered. "Is there a medical emergency? We need to clear the gate area if you're not traveling." Emma looked up with confused brown eyes. "Mama, what's wrong? Are we going to see Grandma or not?" Sarah knelt down, her hands shaking as she cupped her daughter's face. The terminal's air conditioning couldn't cool the cold sweat beating on her forehead. "Baby, we need to take a different flight. Maybe tomorrow. But we already packed, and Grandma is making cookies." Emma's lower lip quivered with disappointment. Behind them, an elderly man cleared his throat impatiently. "Some of us have connections to make, lady." Sarah ignored him, her focus entirely on the window where she could see ground crews preparing the aircraft. In her peripheral vision, she noticed a maintenance worker examining something near the wing. Her heart lurched. Was that where it would start? The electrical failure that would turn their journey into a nightmare? She stood abruptly, scooping Emma into her arms despite the girl's protests. "We're leaving, now." As they hurried away from the gate, Sarah heard the agent make another announcement. "Final boarding call for Flight 447. The words echoed behind them like a death knell. In the taxi back to their apartment, Emma pressed her face against the rain-streaked window. "Will we really go tomorrow, Mommy?" Sarah watched the airport shrink in the distance, her hands still trembling. "We'll find another way, sweetheart. Sometimes we have to listen to our feelings." That evening, as Emma slept peacefully in her bed, surrounded by half-packed suitcases, Sarah sat glued to the news. At 6:47 p.m., the report came. Flight 447 had been struck by lightning 20 minutes after takeoff. All 127 passengers and crew had perished when the aircraft broke apart mid-flight. Sarah's blood turned to ice. She'd saved them, but the relief felt hollow. In the depths of her mind, a terrible certainty began to form. Death had been cheated, not defeated. 3 days after the crash, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that invisible eyes were watching her every move. She'd taken a leave of absence from her job at the marketing firm, unable to concentrate on anything beyond keeping Emma safe. Their cramped Denver apartment, once a temporary stop before their Arizona move, now felt like both sanctuary and prison. The first incident happened on Tuesday morning. Sarah was making breakfast when the kitchen outlet began sparking violently, shooting orange flames that licked at the floral wallpaper. Emma had been reaching for her juice box on the counter, her small fingers inches from the electrical malfunction. "Emma, get back!" Sarah yanked her daughter away just as the outlet exploded in a shower of sparks. The acrid smell of burning plastic filled the air, and smoke began curling toward the ceiling. Emma's eyes widened with fear. "Mommy, what happened?" Sarah's hand shook as she flipped a circuit breaker, her mind racing back to the vision on the plane. Fire. It was always fire. Just a bad outlet, baby. These old apartments have problems sometimes, but Sarah knew better. She'd lived here for 2 years without incident. This wasn't coincidence. After calling the maintenance company, she spent the afternoon at the local coffee shop with Emma, watching her daughter color in a princess coloring book while her own coffee grew cold. The normalcy felt fragile, like walking on eggshells over an abyss. Mrs. Martinez, the electrician, a weathered man named Pete, met them back at the apartment that evening. "Strangest thing I've seen in 20 years. That outlet just fried itself. No reason for it. The wiring's fine, no moisture damage, no overload. It's like electricity just decided to go haywire." Sarah nodded mechanically, but her blood was turning cold. She paid Pete quickly and locked the door behind him, checking it twice. That night, she lay awake listening to every creak and whisper in the building. Around 2 a.m, she heard it, a soft crackling sound from the living room. Her heart hammered as she crept out of bed, expecting to find flames consuming their meager furniture. Instead, she found Emma standing in front of the television, remote in hand. The screen flickered with static, and small sparks danced around the power cord. "Emma, step away from there." Sarah lunged forward, scooping her daughter up just as the TV screen went black with a sharp pop. Emma rubbed her sleepy eyes. "I couldn't sleep. I wanted to watch cartoons." Sarah's throat felt raw with terror. "Did you touch anything? The cord? The plug?" "No, Mommy. It started making funny noises by itself." The next morning, Sarah called her mother in Phoenix. "Mom, I need to ask you something strange. Has anyone in our family ever seen things before they happened?" Her mother's pause was telling. "Mia, why are you asking this?" "Please, Mom, it's important." A long sigh came through the phone. "Your grandmother, may she rest in peace, she sometimes knew things. Said death leaves marks before it comes calling." "But Sarah, what's this about?" Sarah couldn't bring herself to explain. How could she tell her mother that she was being hunted by forces beyond understanding? That every electrical device in their home had become a potential weapon? Instead, she packed their essentials and moved them to a hotel across town, paying cash for a week's stay. The room was newer, the wiring more modern. Maybe here they'd be safe. But that night, as Emma slept peacefully in the queen bed beside her, Sarah watched the digital clock on the nightstand begin to flicker erratically. The red numbers jumped and twisted, counting down to something she couldn't comprehend. 12:47, 12:46, 12:45. She unplugged it quickly, but the countdown continued on the dark screen, glowing with an impossible internal light. The hotel room felt like a fishbowl under fluorescent lights, offering the illusion of safety while making Sarah feel completely exposed. She'd barely slept in 3 days, jumping at every sound, every flicker of light. Emma, mercifully, seemed unaware of their dangerous dance with death, treating their hotel stay like an adventure. Thursday brought new horrors. While Emma played with her dolls on the carpet, Sarah noticed the bathroom fan beginning to smoke. She rushed to turn off the switch, but it wouldn't budge, as if some invisible force was holding it in place. The acrid smell of burning motor oil filled the small space. "Emma, we need to go." Right now. They fled to the lobby, where Sarah explained to the concerned desk clerk about the electrical malfunction. Within minutes, maintenance arrived to find the fan had completely burned out, leaving scorch marks across the ceiling tiles. "Ma'am, I've never seen anything like this," the maintenance supervisor told her, scratching his gray beard. "It's like the motor just decided to destroy itself. The wiring's perfect, the circuit's clean. Makes no sense." That afternoon, they sought refuge in Denver's Museum of Nature and Science. Surrounded by families and the cheerful chatter of children, Sarah felt almost normal for the first time since the airport. Emma delighted in the dinosaur exhibits, her laughter echoing through the vast halls. But even here, death found them. In the electricity exhibit, the interactive displays began malfunctioning one by one as they approached. The Van de Graaff generator sparked violently, sending blue arcs dancing through the air. A plasma ball exploded in a shower of glass when Emma reached toward it, forcing evacuations of that entire wing. "Some kind of electromagnetic interference," a security guard explained to the gathering crowd. "Happens sometimes during storms, but the sky outside was clear blue, without a cloud in sight." That evening, Sarah sat in their new hotel room, their third in 4 days, staring at her laptop screen. She'd been researching everything she could find about premonitions, death omens, and supernatural phenomena. Most of it was nonsense, but some stories resonated with chilling familiarity. Emma was in the bathroom, brushing her teeth before bed, humming a tune from her favorite cartoon. The sound brought Sarah a moment of peace until she heard the humming stop abruptly. "Mommy!" Emma's scream pierced the air. Sarah ran to find her daughter backing away from the mirror above the sink. In the reflection, instead of Emma's face, Sarah saw flames consuming a small figure, her daughter, trapped in a ring of fire that seemed to dance just behind the glass. "I don't like this mirror, Mommy. It's showing scary things." Sarah's hands trembled as she lifted Emma away from the sink. In the mirror, her own reflection looked haggard and desperate, but behind her shoulder, she could swear she saw the shadow of wings consumed by flame. She covered the mirror with a towel and held Emma close, feeling her daughter's heartbeat against her chest, like a small bird fighting to stay alive. "We're leaving Denver tomorrow," she whispered into Emma's hair. "We'll drive to Grandma's house. No planes, no hotels, no electricity we can't control." But even as she made the promise, Sarah knew she was only delaying the inevitable. Death had marked them both in that airport vision, and it wouldn't be satisfied until its debt was collected. That night, she didn't sleep at all. Instead, she sat by the window watching the city lights flicker like dying stars, each one seeming to wink out just as her gaze found it. In the distance, she could swear she heard the rumble of aircraft engines, even though the airport was 20 miles away. Time was running out, and she could feel the net closing around them with each passing hour. Friday morning arrived gray and heavy, matching Sarah's mood as she loaded their belongings into her aging Honda Civic. Emma bounced in her car seat, excited about the road trip adventure, completely unaware that they were fleeing for their lives. "How long until we see Grandma, Mommy?" "About 12 hours, baby. We'll stop for lunch and dinner. Make it fun." Sarah forced cheerfulness into her voice while checking the car's electrical systems for the third time. Everything seemed normal. Battery, alternator, lights all functioning perfectly. They pulled out of the hotel parking lot at 8:47 Amos, Denver's skyline shrinking in the rearview mirror. For the first time in days, Sarah felt a flutter of hope. Maybe distance would break whatever supernatural hold death had on them. Maybe they could outrun destiny. The first 3 hours passed peacefully. Emma dozed in her car seat while children's music played softly from the radio. The Colorado landscape rolled by in endless brown hills, dotted with scrub brush and occasional cattle. Sarah kept the speedometer at exactly 65 miles per hour, not wanting to attract any attention that might delay their escape. Near the New Mexico border, the first sign appeared. The radio began emitting short bursts of static between songs, like Morse code messages from some malevolent intelligence. Sarah changed stations, but every frequency carried the same interruption. 3 long bursts, 2 short ones, then silence. Over and over. Emma stirred in her sleep. "Mommy, the music sounds funny." Sarah turned off the radio entirely, but the static continued emanating from the speakers, growing louder with each repetition. She pulled over at a desert gas station, her hands sweating despite the air conditioning. "Why did we stop?" Emma asked, rubbing her eyes. "Just need to check something, sweetheart." "Stay in your seat." Sarah popped the hood and examined the engine, looking for any obvious electrical problems. A grizzled mechanic emerged from the garage, wiping his hands on a greasy rag. "Car trouble, miss?" "The radio's acting up. Static on all the stations." He nodded knowingly. "Happens out here sometimes. Solar flares mess with electronics. Should clear up in a few hours." But when Sarah tried to start the car, nothing happened. The engine wouldn't turn over, the lights wouldn't illuminate, and the digital clock had gone completely dark. Even her cell phone had mysteriously died, despite showing a full charge moments before. "That's peculiar," the mechanic muttered, connecting his diagnostic equipment. "Everything looks fine mechanically, but it's like the electrical system just gave up the ghost." The phrase sent ice through Sarah's veins. She glanced back at Emma, who was now fully awake and starting to look worried. While they waited for the mechanic to work, Sarah and Emma sat in the gas station's small cafe, sharing a bag of chips and watching tumbleweeds blow across the desert highway. Through the windows, heat mirages danced on the asphalt like flames without fuel. "Mommy, why do bad things keep happening to us?" Emma asked with the devastating innocence only children possess. Sarah's throat tightened. How could she explain that they were being hunted by death itself? That every electrical failure, every spark, every malfunction was another attempt to claim what had been promised in that airplane vision? "Sometimes life tests us, baby. But we're strong, and we take care of each other." 2 hours later, the mechanic returned with puzzling news. Fixed itself somehow. Electrical system just came back online like nothing happened. "Strangest thing I've seen in 30 years of fixing cars." They drove away from the gas station as storm clouds began gathering on the horizon, despite weather reports calling for clear skies. Sarah pressed harder on the accelerator, desperate to reach Phoenix before nightfall. In her gut, she knew darkness would bring new dangers. Emma had fallen asleep again when the dashboard began flickering erratically. Every gauge needle jumped wildly. Fuel, temperature, speedometer, all spinning like compass needles seeking magnetic north. The headlights strobed in rhythm with the dashboard chaos, casting crazy shadows across the desert landscape. Sarah gripped the steering wheel tighter, fighting to maintain control as the car systems went haywire around them. In the distance, she could see city lights beginning to twinkle as Phoenix approached. Safety felt tantalizingly close. But in her rear-view mirror, something else was approaching. A darkness that seemed to swallow the stars themselves, rolling across the desert like a tsunami of shadow. And within that darkness, she could swear she saw the silhouette of burning wings. The Phoenix city limits appeared like a mirage of salvation as Sarah's Honda limped into the sprawling desert metropolis. The electrical malfunctions had ceased as mysteriously as they'd begun, leaving behind only the memory of terror and the persistent feeling of being watched by unseen eyes. Emma's grandmother, Maria Martinez, lived in a modest adobe house in an older neighborhood where palm trees cast long shadows across cracked sidewalks. The familiarity of the place should have brought comfort, but Sarah felt only the temporary relief of a prey animal finding momentary shelter. "Mia, Emma." Maria emerged from the house with arms wide, her weathered face lighting up with joy. At 73, she still possessed the fierce warmth that had raised Sarah as a single mother decades earlier. Emma ran into her grandmother's embrace, chattering excitedly about their adventure while Sarah unloaded their meager belongings. In the fading desert sunset, everything looked almost normal. Almost. "You look terrible," Maria said quietly as Emma played in the backyard with an old soccer ball. "What aren't you telling me?" Sarah couldn't meet her mother's eyes. "We had to leave Denver suddenly. Work situation got complicated." But Maria's dark eyes saw everything. She'd always possessed an unsettling ability to read people's souls. "This is about what we discussed on the phone, isn't it? The family gift." That night, after Emma had fallen asleep in the small guest bedroom, Sarah found herself sitting at her mother's kitchen table, staring into a cup of coffee that had grown cold hours ago. The house was quiet, except for the gentle hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic on the nearby interstate. "Tell me everything," Maria said, settling into the chair across from her. So Sarah did. She told her about the airplane vision, the flight that crashed, the electrical malfunctions that seemed to hunt them across 2 states. She spoke of mirrors that showed burning figures and radios that whispered messages in static. Maria listened without interruption, her expression growing more troubled with each detail. "Ay, Dios mío," Maria whispered when Sarah finished. "Your grandmother warned me this might happen someday. She said death doesn't like to be cheated. What does that mean?" Maria rose and moved to an old wooden cabinet, returning with a faded photograph of a stern-looking woman in a black dress. "Your great-grandmother, Esperanza. She saw her husband's death in a dream, a construction accident. She convinced him to stay home that day, but ... double quotes. But what? The accident happened anyway. A beam fell through their roof while he was reading the morning paper. She saved him from one death, only to deliver him to another. Sarah's blood turned to ice water. You're saying there's no escape. I'm saying death keeps its appointments, Mia. But sometimes there are ways to redirect the path." Before Sarah could ask what she meant, the kitchen lights began to flicker in a familiar pattern. 3 long pulses, 2 short ones. The same rhythm they'd heard in the car radio. Emma appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes. "The lamp in my room is making scary noises, Grandma." Maria stood quickly, her face pale in the strobing light. "Sarah, take Emma outside. Now." "Mom, what's happening?" "It's here. It found you." The house's electrical system began failing in sequence. Living room lamps exploding in showers of sparks. The television screen cracking down the middle. Smoke pouring from outlet covers. The smell of burning wire filled the air as shadows danced wildly on the walls. Sarah grabbed Emma and ran for the front door, but it wouldn't open. The electronic deadbolt had engaged and wouldn't respond to the key. Behind them, fire began consuming the kitchen curtains, spreading with unnatural speed across surfaces that shouldn't burn. The back door. Maria shouted over the growing roar of flames. They ran through the house as electrical fires erupted around them like deadly flowers blooming in fast forward. The back door stood open, offering escape into the cool desert night. But as they reached the threshold, Sarah looked back to see Maria standing in the burning kitchen, arms raised as if conducting some invisible orchestra. Her lips moved in words Sarah couldn't hear over the crackling flames. "Mom, come on." Maria turned toward them, her face peaceful despite the inferno surrounding her. "I'm buying you time, Mia. Take Emma and run. There's a place, the old church on 7th Street. Father Rodriguez will know what to do." The roof began to collapse as Sarah pulled Emma into the backyard. The last thing she saw was her mother disappearing into a wall of flame that seemed to bow respectfully around her before consuming everything else. They ran into the desert night, Emma's sobs mixing with the distant wail of approaching sirens. Behind them, the house became a pillar of fire against the dark sky, and Sarah knew with terrible certainty that her mother's sacrifice had bought them only temporary reprieve. Death was patient, but it would not be denied forever. Father Rodriguez was a small man with kind eyes and hands worn smooth by decades of prayer. He met them at the door of Sacred Heart Church on 7th Street, having somehow expected their arrival despite the late hour. The adobe sanctuary smelled of incense and old wood, filled with shadows that seemed to offer protection rather than threat. "She called me," he explained softly, leading them to a pew near the altar where votive candles flickered like tiny prayers made visible. "Maria said you would come, that you would need sanctuary." Emma curled against Sarah's side, exhausted by terror she couldn't fully comprehend. The child had stopped asking questions after watching her grandmother's house burn, as if some instinct warned her that answers would only bring more fear. "Can you help us?" Sarah whispered, afraid to speak too loudly in the sacred space. Father Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment, studying the dancing flames of the prayer candles. "Your mother explained about the family gift, and the price that comes with cheating death. There has to be something. Some way to break this curse." The priest shook his head slowly. "It's not a curse, child. It's balance. Your grandmother saw this truth. Every life saved requires a life given." Maria understood. Sarah's chest tightened with grief and rage. "So we're supposed to just accept this? Let it kill us?" "No, but you must understand what you're fighting. Death isn't evil. It's necessary. A force of nature, like gravity or time. When we disrupt its work, it seeks to restore equilibrium." Outside, thunder rumbled despite the clear desert sky. The church's lights flickered once, twice, then steadied. But Sarah noticed the votive candles burning brighter, their flames stretching toward the ceiling as if reaching for something beyond sight. What did my mother do back there? How did she buy us time? Father Rodriguez's smile was sad and proud. She offered herself as substitute. Told death it could have her life in place of yours, at least temporarily. But such bargains don't last forever. Emma stirred against Sarah's shoulder. "Mommy, I'm scared. The candles look funny." Sarah looked around the church and felt her heart sink. Every votive candle was now burning with impossible intensity, their flames dancing in perfect unison as if controlled by some invisible conductor. The temperature in the sanctuary began to rise despite the night's coolness. "Father, we need to go." But when they reached the church doors, they found them sealed shut by some force beyond the physical. The heavy wooden barriers wouldn't budge despite their combined efforts. Around them, the candle flames grew taller, and the smell of melting wax filled the air. "It's here," Father Rodriguez said quietly, his voice carrying decades of faith tested by impossible things. "But perhaps there's still a choice to be made." Sarah turned to him desperately. "What choice?" The priest pointed to the altar where a single large candle burned with normal flame, untouched by the supernatural fire consuming the others. Light passes from one candle to another, but the original flame continues. Life works the same way. Understanding dawned like ice water in Sarah's veins. "You're talking about Emma. I'm talking about love that transcends death. About a mother's choice to ensure her child's future, even at the ultimate cost." The church was now filled with heat that made breathing difficult. Emma clung to Sarah with desperate strength, her small face buried against her mother's chest. Around them, the votive candles had become pillars of flame reaching toward the vaulted ceiling. Sarah knelt down and looked into her daughter's eyes, brown like her own, bright with intelligence and trust and the infinite possibility of unlived years. In those depths, she saw everything worth saving in the world. "Emma, baby, I need you to listen very carefully. Father Rodriguez is going to take you somewhere safe, okay? You're going to live with him for a while. What about you, Mommy?" Sarah's voice broke as she smoothed Emma's hair one last time. "Mommy has to stay here, but I'll always be with you in here." She pressed her hand over Emma's heart. "Every time you're brave, every time you're kind, every time you help someone, that's me, loving you forever." The flames reached toward them now, but Sarah felt no fear. Only the profound peace of a choice made from perfect love. She kissed Emma's forehead and passed her to Father Rodriguez, who had somehow found a path to a door that hadn't existed moments before. "Remember your grandmother's cookies," Sarah called as they disappeared into the night. "Remember how much you are loved." As the flames finally claimed her, Sarah's last vision was not of death but of life. Emma grown into a beautiful woman, holding children of her own, passing down stories of love that conquers even death itself. The fire felt like coming home, and in its heart, she heard her mother's voice welcoming her to a place where sacrifice transforms into eternal light. The church burned until dawn, but the door through which Emma escaped remained untouched by flame, and the path beyond it led to safety, to life, to the endless possibility of stories yet to be told. Some flames destroy, but others illuminate the way forward. In our next tale of premonition and fate, we'll discover that not all visions of death can be outrun, and sometimes the only escape lies in the choices we make for those we love most.